Before the term muscle car even existed, America's automakers were already flirting with high-horsepower machines. The year 1950 wasn't all chrome and white-wall tires. Under the surface, a performance revolution was brewing. Some manufacturers, inspired by post-war innovation and an appetite for speed, began crafting early muscle-worthy cars with powerful engines and daring designs. Here are 11 early American super muscle cars from around 1950 that promised fire and fury, and then faded into history.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 11, the 1957 Ford Thunderbird E-Code, one of the boldest and most performance-oriented American personal luxury cars of the 1950s. In the 1950s, American automakers were exploring new market segments. Bigger cars, more chrome, more horsepower. But Ford took a different turn in 1955 with the Thunderbird, a personal two-seater that emphasized style and comfort over raw performance. It was never meant to be a Corvette fighter, even if the public perceived it that way. By 1957, however, the Thunderbird's final year as a two-seater, it had grown in size, style, and sophistication. And thanks to a special E-Code option, it had also grown serious muscle. The 1957 Ford Thunderbird E-Code wasn't just pretty, it packed real power with a dual-quad 312 V8 making 270 horsepower. This version was a muscle car in spirit before the term even existed, but it was also too small, too niche, and too expensive to ignite a broader trend. The E in E-Code stood for the engine's VIN code, denoting a 312 cubic inch V8 topped with dual Holley 4-barrel carburetors on an aluminum intake manifold. Key specs: 312 CID V8, dual Holley 4 barrels, dual quads, 270 horsepower, 336 pound-feet of torque, high 9.7 to 1 compression ratio, optional 3-speed manual or Ford-O-Matic automatic transmission. The engine was derived from Ford's Y-Block family, but elevated to new performance heights with this configuration. It was essentially a street-legal hot rod, and it offered surprisingly aggressive acceleration for a car that looked like a fashion statement. An even more powerful variant, the F-Code Supercharged Thunderbird, with 300 horsepower, would eclipse it slightly in rarity and power, but the E-Code was the more usable, better balanced performance setup. By 1957, the Thunderbird had undergone some subtle but meaningful changes. Longer front overhang and sharper tail fins, a redesigned grille and bumper, larger trunk, more interior space, a smoother dashboard layout with improved instrumentation. Despite its small footprint, the 1957 Thunderbird exuded elegance, a mix of Hollywood Boulevard cruiser and sport luxury roadster. It had just enough menace in the dual exhaust and hood scoop to suggest performance, but never looked brutish. Interior options included power windows and seats, engine turn dash trim, optional town and country signal-seeking radio, padded dash, two-tone color schemes, and full carpeting. It was a boutique experience, not a car for the average family man, but for the upwardly mobile dreamer. The E-Code Thunderbird wasn't a sports car in the European sense, but in a straight line, it could easily outrun many sedans and coupes of its day. Estimated performance: E-Code with manual transmission, 0 to 60 miles per hour, approximately 8.5 seconds, quarter mile, Gertz 16 seconds. Top speed, 120 plus miles per hour. The Y-Block V8 had a strong low-end torque curve, giving the T-Bird good city punch and effortless highway cruising. While it didn't corner like a Corvette or a Jaguar XK140, its ride was more comfortable, its interior more refined. This made the Thunderbird more of a grand touring coupe without a roof than a true sports car. In 1957, a well-optioned Thunderbird could approach $4,000, making it one of the most expensive Fords ever sold at the time. This put it in the realm of entry-level Cadillacs, top-tier Buicks, the Chrysler 300B, another personal luxury performance coupe. Sales for the Thunderbird in 1957 totaled 21,380 units, but the E-Code made up only a small fraction. Fewer than 1,500 are estimated to have been built. Most buyers didn't check the box for dual quads. It was a niche model in an already narrow segment. The T-Bird's small cabin, limited cargo space, and premium price meant it never quite became a mass-market car. Too plush for racers, too cramped for families. 1957 was the swan song for the two-seat Thunderbird. In 1958, Ford transformed the model into a four-seater, a move that infuriated some purists but greatly expanded its appeal. The new four-seat Thunderbird would go on to sell in much larger numbers, becoming the prototype for the personal luxury car segment, a genre later followed by the Pontiac Grand Prix, Buick Riviera, and Chevrolet Monte Carlo. The E-Code, then, represents the high-performance peak of the two-seater T-Bird, a car built during a moment when Ford wasn't yet sure what the Thunderbird should be. A Corvette rival? A boulevard cruiser? A rolling fashion piece? The E-Code tried to be all three. Number 10, the 1959 Plymouth Fury Golden Commando, a car that had muscle under the hood but lost its way in styling and branding during one of the most excessive eras of Detroit design. In the mid to late 1950s, Plymouth Fury was riding high. Originally a sporty, high-performance subseries of the Belvedere, it symbolized Mopar's bold entry into the growing market of performance-minded drivers. The 1956 and 1957 Furies were sleek, aggressive, and fast, with potent V8s and crisp styling that caught the attention of enthusiasts. But by 1959, the Fury, now its own full-fledged model line, had taken a sharp turn. While it still packed power under the hood, especially in the Golden Commando trim, the Fury's exterior became a textbook example of late 1950s design excess. Unfortunately, this visual overindulgence clouded the car's performance heritage and muddled its identity. Let's begin with the hardware, the part that actually lived up to the Fury name. In 1959, Plymouth offered the Golden Commando engine as a high-performance option in the Fury lineup. Buyers could choose from dual four-barrel carburetors, 10.01 compression, 305 to 310 horsepower, solid lifters and performance cam. Higher displacement version introduced mid-year, optional dual quad carb setup, RAM induction, up to 330 horsepower in select versions. Both engines offered serious straight-line performance, especially when paired with the optional Torque Flight, 3-speed automatic, or the rare 3-speed manual. 0 to 60 mph times dipped below 8 seconds. Impressive for a full-size car in the late 50s. These weren't just boulevard cruisers. With the right tuning, they were stoplight warriors. But few remember that today, because something else stole the spotlight. Where the engine bay inspired excitement, the bodywork sparked confusion or laughter. The 1959 Fury styling pushed Virgil Exner's forward-look design language to its breaking point. Rocket-age tail fins that reach ridiculous heights, oversized quad headlights perched like bug eyes, a massive grille with a disjointed eyebrow overhang, cluttered rear deck in complex side trim, awkward front fender flares in odd proportions. It was as if a spaceship in a jukebox had a child, and that child was the 1959 Fury. Even compared to its already extravagant 1957 and 1958 siblings, the 59 model was too much. The once aggressive stance became bulbous. The clean, jet-age theme collapsed into an incoherent pile of chrome, angles, and gimmicks. This dramatic styling shift came at a cost: the Fury's reputation. In 1956 and 1957, the Fury was a low-slung, no-nonsense performance coupe. By 1959, it had grown in every direction, longer, heavier, and more ostentatious. Yes, it still had muscle under the hood, but to the average buyer, the car no longer said speed, it said status, and in a gaudy, overstyled way. The Golden Commando name, though impressive, didn't register with mainstream buyers. It sounded like a marketing gimmick rather than a performance brand, especially when compared to rivals like Chevrolet's Fuely 283, Ford's Thunderbird 352, Interceptor. Chrysler's own 300e. The Fury, once a standout, became lost in a sea of confusing trim levels, bloated designs, and fading performance marketing. It wouldn't fully recover its muscle image until the 1960s, with the Savoy and Sport Fury drag strip legends. Despite its flamboyant looks, the 1959 Fury was still a well-engineered car underneath. Highlights included torsion air front suspension, a torsion bar system that gave it a smoother, more controlled ride than many competitors. Push-button automatic transmission, Chrysler's signature torque flight setup, one of the best automatics of the time. Optional power steering and brakes, dual exhaust and limited slip differential. But it was heavy, over 4,000 pounds with full options, and its handling was never more than adequate. The car excelled on straight roads and highways, but it wasn't nimble. The 1959 Fury was a commercial success in terms of sales, but it marked the end of an era. The muscle and sportiness of the original Fury had been overshadowed by styling excess and market confusion. The Golden Commando trim was rare and offered significant power, but it was soon forgotten. It never became a collectible nameplate like the Roadrunner, GTX, or Super B. Today, few collectors seek out the 1959 Fury, unless they're fans of over-the-top design. Some restoration enthusiasts have rescued Golden Commando models and highlighted their muscle under the metal, but they remain underdogs in the Mopar world. Number 9, the 1957 Chevrolet 150 Black Widow, a rare and formidable factory-built NASCAR weapon that briefly showed Chevrolet's performance potential, only to be undone by corporate politics. To the casual observer, the Chevrolet 150 in 1957 was the bottom of the lineup, the no-frills entry-level fleet car. It lacked the chrome, options, and prestige of the Bel Air. It was the car bought by municipalities, budget-conscious buyers, and taxi companies. But beneath that modest exterior, Chevrolet and NASCAR engineers secretly built a race-ready monster, the 1957 Chevrolet 150 Black Widow. With a stripped-down body, reinforced frame, and fuel-injected 2.83 V8, it was a purpose-built racing machine, officially sanctioned and sold by GM until the suit stepped in. In the 1950s, stock car racing exploded in popularity, particularly in the American South. NASCAR was growing fast, and automakers began to realize the marketing value of win on Sunday, sell on Monday. Chevrolet had dominated the streets with its small block V8 introduced in 1955. By 1957, that engine was capable of pushing 1 horsepower per cubic inch, a huge milestone. But to prove its mettle, Chevy needed to win on the track. Enter Sadin Engineering, a skunkworks-like racing unit that Chevrolet quietly supported to field NASCAR-ready Chevrolets. Their greatest creation, the Black Widow 150. Chevrolet's 150 series was light, basic, and perfect for competition. Here's why it was chosen. No extra chrome or trim to add weight, minimal interior, no rear seat, little insulation, lighter body panels, more rigid suspension than the cushier Bel Air. Essentially, it was a blank slate, ideal for modification. The star of the Black Widow was its engine, 283 cubic inch small block V8, optional Rochester ramjet mechanical fuel injection, output, 283 horsepower at 6,200 RPM, 1 horsepower per cubic inch. This wasn't fantasy. This was production technology available on showroom cars, though rarely ordered due to high cost. Backed by a heavy-duty 3-speed manual transmission, a reinforced drive shaft, and a 4.11 rear axle ratio, the car could easily top 120 miles per hour on the oval, with better throttle response than most carbureted V8s. Chevrolet didn't just supply an engine, they prepped a small batch of Black Widow cars to racing spec. Heavy-duty suspension, springs, shocks, sway bar, reinforced frame cross members, larger 6-lug wheels and racing tires, dual shocks in the rear, 6-lug Corvette brakes for better stopping power, electric fuel pump and dual fuel tanks, roll bar and safety harness. While sold to teams and privateers, these were factory-developed cars built by GM's racing partners like Nally Chevrolet and Sedco, Southern Engineering and Development Company. In the 1957 NASCAR Grand National Series, the Black Widow was a revelation. Piloted by drivers like Buck Baker, The car was lighter and more agile than Ford's and Chryslers, had superior fuel economy, reducing pit stops. Accelerated quicker due to better power-to-weight ratio. Buck Baker won the 1957 NASCAR championship, and Chevrolet claimed dozens of wins across the season. The Black Widow was dominating, but it wouldn't last. In mid-1957, the Automobile Manufacturers Association, AMA, declared a voluntary ban on factory-supported racing. Citing safety concerns and public relations risks, General Motors pulled the plug. Overnight, Chevrolet was forced to withdraw official support, cease production of racing parts, deny involvement with factory teams. The Black Widow was killed by policy, not performance. Though privateers continued to race them through 1958, the pipeline of parts and engineering dried up. Few cars survived unmodified. Exact numbers are unclear due to the unofficial nature of the program. Historians estimate fewer than 10 to 20 full-spec Black Widow cars were factory-built. Based on 1957 152-door business coupe shells. Virtually all were raced and modified beyond stock. Today, original Black Widows are nearly extinct. Most surviving examples are tribute or recreation cars, and even they are rare. Number 8, the 1958 Mercury Super Marauder, an underrated milestone in American performance history. A car that was both a technical marvel and a marketing mystery. In the 1950s, America was obsessed with power, prestige, and pushing limits. As the economy boomed and the highways stretched across the country, automakers entered an arms race, not with missiles, but with horsepower. Cubic inches multiplied, dual quads appeared, chrome air cleaners gleamed beneath sculpted hoods. By 1958, Mercury, Ford's upscale brand, delivered a bold technical achievement that most people have forgotten: the Super Marauder 430 V8, the first mass-produced American engine rated at 400 horsepower from the factory. Offered briefly and sold in minuscule numbers, this engine turned Mercury's bloated full-sizers into accidental muscle cars. But high price, confusing branding, and timing doomed it to obscurity. In the late 1950s, Mercury was struggling to define itself. Positioned between Ford and Lincoln, it was trying to be both sporty and luxurious, but it had no clear identity. Chevrolet had the Corvette. Chrysler had the 300 letter cars. Pontiac was about to release the Bonavville. Ford had Mercury. The brand had style, but it lacked performance cred until engineers dropped in a monster. At the center of this story is the Super Marauder engine, a special version of Ford's MEL, Mercury Edsel Lincoln, Big Block. Specifications: displacement, 430 cubic inches, 7.0 liters. Horsepower, 400 horsepower at 5,600 RPM. Torque, 490 pound-feet at 580 degrees Celsius. 3,200 RPM. Compression ratio, 10.5 to 1. Carburation, triple two-barrel Holley carburetors, tri-power setup. It was an engineering showpiece: aluminum intake manifold, high-lift cam, solid lifters, beefed-up bottom end, and a massive thirst for premium fuel. At a time when most cars hovered around 200 to 250 horsepower, this engine was twice as powerful as many of its rivals. The only other car in this territory was the Chrysler 300D with its 392 Hemi at 380 horsepower, and even that didn't hit the 400 mark. Here's where it gets strange. Mercury never really promoted the Super Marauder properly. It was optional on top trim models like the Monterey, Montclair, and Park Lane. It cost over $500, a massive price for an engine upgrade, about 15% of the car's base price. It wasn't available across the Ford lineup. Only at Mercury. There were no Super Marauder badges on the cars unless added by dealers. As a result, fewer than 10 known factory Super Marauder-equipped Mercurys survive, and the actual production number is believed to be under 100. Some dealers installed the engine at delivery. Others ordered the intake as an over-the-counter racing part. The line between factory car and dealer special was blurry and confusing. The Super Marauder wasn't just a brag sheet motor. It was genuinely powerful. In independent tests, Super Marauder-equipped Mercuries could do 0 to 60 miles per hour in 7.5 seconds, quarter mile in the 15 to 16-second range. Top speed approaching 130 miles per hour? That's impressive for a 4,500-pound luxury barge, and better than many sports cars of the day. But insurance companies and cautious buyers weren't ready. Most buyers passed on the triple-carb engine and went with the base 312 or 383 instead. There was one glaring issue. The 1958 Mercury was gigantic, longer than 215 inches, weighed over 4,000 pounds, styled like a rocket-powered jukebox. The car had garish chrome, huge tail fins, and confusing model names. It looked more like a land yacht than a performance sedan. Buyers couldn't reconcile the looks with the performance claims. In short, Mercury built a muscle car engine, but installed it in a car that looked like it should be carrying a parade float. By 1959, the Super Marauder engine disappeared. Ford cut the 3x2 carb setup from the lineup. Insurance companies had become wary of high-horsepower full-size cars. The 430 V8 was detuned and relegated to Lincoln duty, no longer a performance engine. Mercury's flirtation with factory performance had fizzled out, and it wouldn't return in a serious way until the Marauder name was revived in the 1960s. Number 7, the 1958 Pontiac Bonavville Tri-Power, a luxurious bruiser that helped lay the groundwork for the American muscle car movement. In 1958, the American auto industry was undergoing a transition. Chrome-laden land yachts still ruled the showrooms, but a few brands were beginning to experiment with something else: performance. Among those trailblazers was Pontiac, a division that just 2 years earlier had been seen as conservative and stodgy. But under the direction of Simon Bunky Knudsen and engineers like John DeLorean, Pontiac was poised to become GM's performance brand. And it all began in many ways with the 1958 Bonavville Tri-Power, a bold, powerful, luxurious coupe that hinted at what was to come. The Bonavville name first appeared in 1957 as a limited production convertible, meant to showcase Pontiac's new fuel-injected V8 and draw attention to its performance ambitions. Just 630 units were built, making it a halo car. By 1958, Bonavville was upgraded to full production status and offered in both convertible and hardtop form. Positioned at the top of Pontiac's lineup, it was the division's most expensive and lavish model, yet also its most powerful. This combination of luxury and speed would become Pontiac's trademark for the next decade. Under the hood of the 1958 Bonavville sat a new engine, the 370 cubic inch 6.1-liter Phi-8, an evolution of the Pontiac 347. It was available in several configurations, but the one that grabbed attention was the Tri-Power setup. Tri-Power specs: displacement, 370 cubic inches. Horsepower, up to 300 horsepower with Tri-Power. Torque, around 400 pound-feet. Induction, 3 Rochester 2-barrel carburetors. Compression, up to 10.5 to 1 with premium fuel. The term Tri-Power referred to the triple carburetor arrangement, 1 center carb for normal driving and 2 outboard carbs that opened under full throttle. This gave the driver a satisfying jolt of acceleration when needed, a party trick that would become iconic on later Pontiacs. While 300 horsepower may not sound monstrous today, it was serious muscle in 1958. Only a handful of full-size cars offered similar output, and most did not pair it with the Bonaville's combination of styling, luxury, and performance intent. The 1958 Bonaville was a visual statement as much as a mechanical one. Massive body length, over 220 inches, wide horizontal grille and quad headlights, chrome galore, inside and out. Rear fins that merged into sculpted rear fenders, lavish interiors with two-tone leather, metallic trim, and full instrumentation. Every inch of the car screamed post-war prosperity and excess. Yet unlike many of its contemporaries, the Bonaville's styling was cohesive and balanced. Sporty, not bloated. Standard features included power steering and brakes, a padded dashboard, dual exhaust, a unique badging scheme. It wasn't just a pretty face. The car rode on Pontiac's wide-track suspension, which pushed the wheels further apart for improved handling and stability, a feature that would be marketed heavily in the coming years. Despite its performance aspirations, the 1958 Bonavville had one major drawback: weight. The Bonavville hardtop tipped the scales at over 4,200 pounds. Acceleration was strong, but it couldn't match lighter competitors in raw speed or agility. Even with 300 horsepower, the Bonavville was more of a grand touring car than a true street racer. It had impressive torque for highway passing, but it wasn't going to dominate the quarter mile. Its closest in-house competitor, the Chevrolet Impala, offered lighter bodies and similar big block performance, often at a lower price. In the result, Pontiac's Big Brute was often overshadowed by its Chevy cousin, especially in the minds of younger buyers. What the Bonavville did, however, was rebrand Pontiac. No longer just a brand for old folks and conservative buyers, Pontiac now had flash, power, and style. The tri-power setup became a performance signature, appearing on later Pontiacs including the 389-equipped 1960s Catalinas, Grand Prix, and eventually the 1964 GTO. The GTO, often called the first muscle car, owes much of its philosophy to the Bonavville tri-power. Take a big, powerful engine, put it in a stylish, aggressive package, offer it at a competitive price with exciting marketing. While the Bonavville was heavier and more luxurious, it proved the concept that performance could sell, even in full-size cars. Number 6, the 1956 Dodge D500, one of the earliest American factory performance cars that foreshadowed the muscle car era, but was ultimately overshadowed by what came next. When we think of muscle cars, we often jump to the 1960s, GTOs, Mustangs, Chargers. But the seeds of that era were planted a decade earlier. Among the earliest attempts to inject high performance into a regular production vehicle was the 1956 Dodge D500. It didn't wear stripes or scoops. It didn't tear up the drag strip in its day, but it packed a Hemi and was aimed squarely at performance-minded buyers who wanted more than just chrome and fins. By the mid-1950s, post-war optimism had supercharged Detroit's styling departments. Long, wide, and flashy cars dominated showrooms. Power was rising rapidly, but most manufacturers still treated performance as a byproduct, not a purpose. Chrysler, however, had a trick up its sleeve. The Hemi F8, this hemispherical combustion chamber design, was technically advanced and capable of producing serious horsepower. It had already made a splash in Chrysler's 300 series, and NASCAR. Dodge, positioned below Chrysler in the corporate hierarchy, wanted its own piece of the performance pie. Enter the D500. The D500 was introduced as Dodge's first factory performance package, available on Coronet and Royal models. It wasn't just about straight-line speed, it was also a platform aimed at stock car racing and highway patrol use. Key features: engine, 315 cubic inch Hemi V8. Horsepower, 260 horsepower, conservative for its time. Torque, 330 pound-feet. Carburation, Carter 4-barrel. Compression ratio, 9.25 to 1. Transmission, optional PowerFlight automatic or 3-speed manual. Suspension Tarsh brakes, heavier duty springs, shocks, sway bars, and 12-inch drum brakes. This wasn't just a faster Dodge, it was engineered for performance with upgraded chassis components, making it more capable at higher speeds and under harsher driving conditions. For 1956, a full-size sedan running the quarter mile in under 17 seconds was considered brisk. The D500 could run 0 to 60 in around 8.5 seconds and hit top speeds above 120 miles per hour. Strong numbers for the era, especially for a big-bodied family car. The D500 quickly gained a reputation among law enforcement agencies and amateur racers as a serious performer. It even made appearances in NASCAR, with a specially tuned version called the D501, pushing output closer to 285 horsepower with dual 4-barrel carbs. One reason the D500 faded from memory is that it didn't look particularly special. It wore the same basic sheet metal as the Coronet, Royal, or Custom Royal lines. Visual cues included D500, badging, slightly different trim packages, optional two-tone paint jobs. Some had super-powered emblems on the fenders. Unlike later muscle cars that shouted their intent with scoops, stripes, or mag wheels, the D500 was sleeper performance, fast but easy to miss at a glance. The engine was the D500's crown jewel. Dodge's 315 HEMI was a scaled-down, more affordable version of Chrysler's Firepower HEMI. It featured hemispherical combustion chambers for efficient airflow, solid lifters, a beefy forged steel crankshaft, free-breathing heads for improved high RPM power. It was compact, strong, and built for endurance, which made it ideal for both racing and long-distance police pursuit work. While the D500 wasn't marketed with the same fanfare as Chrysler's 300 letter cars, it quietly shared much of their performance DNA. The D500 wasn't a huge seller, not because it wasn't good, but because it wasn't cheap. The performance package added a significant premium to the base Coronet's price, and most 1950s buyers still prioritize style and luxury over outright speed. Only just over 1,000 D500s were produced in 1956, making it rare even in its own time. That scarcity has made them desirable to collectors today, though the car remains mostly unknown to the general public. The D500 is important because it helped establish several core traits that would later define the muscle car. A mid-priced full-size or mid-size car, with a performance engine borrowed from a higher-end division, upgraded suspension and braking, subtle styling with serious performance. Number 5, the 1955 Buick Century, a remarkable but often overlooked performance luxury hybrid of the mid-1950s. In the 1950s, America was roaring, and so were its automobiles. The post-war economy was booming, and so was Detroit's horsepower war. But not everyone wanted fins and flash. Some wanted speed with sophistication. Enter the 1955 Buick Century, affectionately known as the banker's hot rod. It didn't wear racing stripes or flashy decals. It wore chrome, two-tone paint, and white walls. But under the hood, a 322 cubic inch nailhead V8 that made it one of the fastest full-size cars of its day. In 1955, General Motors was the world's largest automaker. It had a finely tuned brand ladder: Chevrolet, affordable and youthful; Pontiac, entry-level upscale; Oldsmobile, innovation and engineering; Buick, prestige, power, and refinement; Cadillac, ultimate luxury. Buick was the doctor, lawyer, and banker's car. Serious, successful, and conservative. But in 1955, Buick got bold. The company saw an opportunity to spice things up by combining its biggest, most powerful engine with its smaller, lighter body shell. The result was the Century, a name that implied both speed and sophistication. The 1955 Century was built on the body of the Buick Special, the brand's entry-level full-size model. But unlike the Special, which came with a milder version of Buick's V8, the Century was equipped with a top-tier engine from the longer and heavier Roadmaster engine specs: 322 cubic inch nailhead, V8 horsepower, 236 horsepower at 4,400 RPM. Torque, 330 pound-feet, compression ratio, 8.5 to 1:1. Carburetor, 4-barrel Carter. Transmission, Dynaflow automatic. Smooth, not sporty. This configuration made the Century one of the fastest cars GM produced in 1955. In fact, one of the fastest in America. Buick, never one for modesty, advertised it as capable of over 100 miles per hour. Hence the name, Century. The 1955 Buick Century didn't scream performance. It was designed to look elegant and confident. Bold chrome grille and bumpers, sweeping two-tone paint options, portholes, aka venti ports, on the fenders, 3 on Specials, 4 on Centuries. Wraparound panoramic windshield, subtle badging, and tasteful trim. Inside, it was pure Buick luxury: broadcloth or leather seats, full dash instrumentation, a large steering wheel, and all the visual gravitas a banker or business executive would want. This wasn't a car for street racers. This was a car for someone who wanted to get to the country club quickly and look good doing it. Despite its image, the 1955 Century could run with the hottest Fords and Chevys of the day. Performance highlights: just 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 10 seconds, very quick for 1955. Top speed just over 100 miles per hour. Quarter mile in the high 17-second range. While it didn't have the raw edge of a stripped-down hot rod, the Century delivered seamless torque thanks to the Nailhead's unique design and the fluid drive Dynaflow transmission. And while the Dynaflow didn't offer snappy shifts, it delivered buttery smooth acceleration, which Buick preferred to call the flight pitch ride. The Nailhead was so named because of its small diameter valves and vertically oriented valve layout, which resembled nails. What it lacked in high revving flow, it made up for in brute torque. It was compact, durable, and capable of serious performance in the right setup. This was Buick's workhorse engine through the 1950s and early 60s. In the Century, it provided muscle in a business suit, refined but forceful. The 1955 Buick Century was a hit and helped Buick finish third in overall U.S. sales behind only Chevrolet and Ford. Buyers appreciated the combination of big car power, mid-size price and footprint, upscale styling, smooth ride quality. It was especially popular among middle-class professionals, hence the nickname, the banker's hot rod. But despite strong sales and critical praise, the Century never quite reached icon status. Several reasons contributed to the Century's fading into obscurity. Buick wasn't seen as a performance brand. Even though the Century was quick, it wasn't marketed like a Chevy Corvette or Ford Thunderbird. The styling aged quickly, and by the late 1950s, fins and flash had become the priority. The Dynaflow transmission dulled performance feel compared to the quicker shifting Powerglide or Ford-O-Matic. The rise of true muscle cars in the 1960s, like the GTO and Mustang, completely redefined what performance meant. Number 4, the 1957 Oldsmobile J2 Rocket 88, one of the boldest early factory performance cars of the 1950s that flirted with muscle car greatness, only to be silenced by corporate conservatism. When we think of early American performance cars, names like the Chevrolet Corvette or Chrysler 300 come to mind. But buried in the chrome-heavy excess of the 1950s lies a sleeper powerhouse, the 1957 Oldsmobile Rocket 88 with the J2 option package. With a triple carbureted 371 cubic inch V8 pumping out up to 300 horsepower, the J2 Rocket 88 wasn't just fast for its time. It was among the fastest full-sized American sedans available. It embodied Oldsmobile's high-tech ambitions, briefly standing at the front of GM's performance parade. But it would soon vanish, not because it failed, but because General Motors got cold feet about horsepower. By 1957, Oldsmobile was nearly 3 decades into building its reputation as GM's innovation brand. It introduced America's first mass-produced automatic transmission, Hydra-Matic, in 1940, and its Rocket 58 in 1949 helped define post-war performance. But while brands like Chevrolet had the Corvette and Chrysler had the 300C, Oldsmobile was drifting. It was known for engineering, but not passion. The Rocket 88 had been a cultural milestone in 1949, but by the mid-1950s, its performance image was fading. The J2 package was meant to bring it back. The star of the show was the J2 Rocket V8, introduced as an option for the 1957 model year. Engine specs: J2 tri-power setup. Displacement: 371 cubic inches. Induction: 3 2-barrel carburetors, tri-power. Horsepower: 300 horsepower at 4,600 RPM. Torque: 415 pound-feet at 2,800 RPM. Compression ratio: 10-to-1 transmission options, 3-speed manual or Hydra-Matic automatic. The triple carb setup was the crown jewel. The center carburetor handled normal driving, while the outer two kicked in under heavy throttle, delivering a rush of torque. This was the first and only time Oldsmobile offered factory tri-power. The J2 setup was a bold statement that Olds could run with Chrysler's 300 or any hot-rodded Chevy. This wasn't a lightweight coupe. The Rocket 88 with the J2 package was a full-size car weighing nearly 4,000 pounds, but it could still crack 0 to 60 in under 9 seconds, depending on the gearing and transmission. Performance. Highlights: 0 to 60 miles per hour, approximately 8.5 seconds. Excellent for a 57 full-size. Quarter mile, low 16s, top speed, approximately 120 miles per hour. Even with its size, the J2 had real highway legs. It could cruise effortlessly at triple-digit speeds, and the Hydra-matic automatic transmission was smooth and strong enough to handle the engine's immense torque. While performance was buried under the hood, the exterior wasn't exactly shouting muscle. The 1957 Olds was heavy on chrome, two-tone paint, and jet-age styling cues, including massive grille and bumper assembly, sweeping side chrome trim, tail fins, modest compared to Cadillac or Plymouth. J2 badging, if you look closely. The car wasn't particularly elegant or sporty looking, more of a bold executive cruiser than a stripped-down street machine. But that contrast made it even more compelling. Raw torque disguised as a family sedan. Given its power and engineering, you'd think the J2 would spark a wave of Oldsmobile performance cars, but it didn't. Why? In early 1957, GM issued a no-racing policy, worried about safety concerns and potential liability. That meant no factory-backed racing, no high-performance promotion, and no support for hot rodding. This policy killed momentum for cars like the J2. Chevrolet had to shut down its Corvette racing program. Oldsmobile quietly dropped the J2 after 1958. Oldsmobile's audience, middle-aged professionals, wasn't seeking drag strip dominance. Most buyers ordered their Rocket 8s with standard 4-barrel carb setups, not triple carbs. The J2 engine was a niche option, not a headline act. While Pontiac would revive tri-power setups in the early 1960s, Oldsmobile never looked back. By 1959, engineering and insurance trends were already shifting toward tamer configurations. Number 3, the 1956 Lincoln Continental Mark II, a hand-built luxury coupe that quietly flirted with performance, cloaked in refinement and exclusivity. In the post-war American automotive boom, most manufacturers were chasing trends: fins, chrome, flash, and performance. But the 1956 Lincoln Continental Mark II was different. It rejected excess in favor of elegance, exclusivity, and understated power. It wasn't built to compete with hot rods or race down the drag strip, but under its minimalist skin lay the bones of a serious grand touring car. Powered by a 368 cubic inch V8 producing 285 horsepower and massive torque, the Mark II was no slouch. But it wasn't a muscle car. It was a rolling statement of refined power, made for those who didn't need to show off because they already had everything. The Mark II wasn't marketed as a Lincoln. Not exactly. It was launched under the Continental Division, a separate brand under Ford Motor Company, created specifically to build the most refined American automobile money could buy. The goal was to recreate the mystique of the original 1940-42 Lincoln Continental, which had been favored by elite tastemakers and industrialists. In a time of tail fins and excess, Ford executives, including William Clay Ford, Henry Ford's grandson, envisioned the Mark II as a return to timeless elegance and craftsmanship, a car for artists, diplomats, and CEOs. At its core, the Mark II was motivated by the best Lincoln had to offer: a 368 cubic inch V8, heavily reworked for durability and smoothness. Engine specs: 1956 Mark II. Displacement: 368 cubic inches, 6.0 liters. Horsepower: 285 horsepower at 5,800 RPM, 4,600 RPM. Torque: 402 pound-feet at 2,700 RPM. Compression ratio: 9.0 to 1. Carburation: single 4-barrel Carter carburetor. Transmission: Lincoln Turbo Drive 3-speed automatic. While it wasn't tuned for drag racing, the Mark II could move, and quickly, especially on the open highway. The massive torque curve made it ideal for effortless acceleration and long-distance cruising. Performance estimates: 0 to 60 miles per hour, approximately 11 seconds. Top speed, approximately 115 miles per hour. Curb weight, approximately 5,100 pounds. These numbers weren't blistering, but they were impressive for a car this heavy and refined. The Mark II was a gentleman's express, offering powerful, hushed acceleration and long-legged touring ability. Unlike mass-produced Detroit iron, the Mark II was built almost entirely by hand. Every body panel was individually fitted, every car was test-driven before delivery, and the paint process involved multiple coats and extensive hand polishing. Up to 15 coats depending on the finish. Inside, the Mark II was dressed in the finest materials available. Real leather upholstery sourced from Bridge of Weir in Scotland, machine-turned instrument bezels, full instrumentation, power windows, seats and ventilation, optional AC, a rare luxury in 1956. Each car was custom-ordered to the buyer's specification. There were no trim levels. The result was a vehicle with Rolls-Royce-level pricing, but an American soul. The Mark II's most radical feature was its restraint. In a decade obsessed with chrome, fins, and jet age excess, the Mark II stood out by rejecting fads. Designers John Reinhardt and Gordon Burig, of Auburn Cord Duesenberg fame, sculpted a clean, formal coupe with a long hood, short deck layout, subtle curves and slab sides, a formal roofline, a tastefully integrated spare tire bulge on the trunk, minimal chrome trim. It was an exercise in modern classicism with echoes of 1930s coach-built bodies. Even today, the Mark II looks dignified and timeless. A luxury car that doesn't scream for attention because it doesn't need to. This car was not intended for the average buyer. Priced at $10,000 in 1956, equivalent to over $110,000 today, it cost more than a Cadillac Eldorado, a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, or a Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. Owners included Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor, the Shah of Iran, Nelson Rockefeller. Only approximately 3,000 units were built across 1956 to 57, making the Mark II one of the rarest and most exclusive American cars of the era. Number 2, the 1957 Packard Clipper Supercharged, a bold but ultimately doomed effort to save a legendary American marque. In the mid-20th century, Packard was once a proud symbol of American luxury and innovation, a marque that rivaled Cadillac and even European elite brands like Rolls-Royce. But by 1957, Packard was on life support, caught in a perfect storm of financial decline, poor mergers, and design stagnation. And yet, in its final days, the company attempted a daring revival. That effort took the form of the 1957 Packard Clipper Supercharged, a car that paired bold performance with desperate ambition. With a supercharged 289 cubic inch V8 producing 275 horsepower, the Clipper was a last-ditch attempt to inject excitement and relevance into a dying brand. To understand the 1957 Clipper, we need to understand Packard's collapse. By the early 1950s, Packard's sales were falling fast. Once known for elegant engineering and conservative design, the company struggled to attract younger buyers in an era increasingly dominated by fins, chrome, and horsepower. Packard's decision to merge with Studebaker in 1954 proved disastrous. The merger was supposed to be a lifeline, but Studebaker's finances were in even worse shape. By 1956, Packard had shuttered its historic Detroit plant and moved production to South Bend, Indiana, home of Studebaker. As a result, the 1957 Packards were no longer Packards in the traditional sense. They were Studebaker bodies with Packard trim and powertrains. The 1957 Clipper, particularly the supercharged version, was the company's last attempt to create a performance image. But it was built with borrowed time, borrowed parts, and a shrinking market. The centerpiece of the 1957 Clipper Supercharged was its engine, a 289 cubic inch V8 borrowed from Studebaker, but radically enhanced with a McCulloch-Paxton supercharger. Engine specifications: engine, 289 cubic inches, 4.7 liters, V8. Induction, McCulloch centrifugal supercharger. Horsepower, 275 horsepower at approximately 4,800 RPM. Torque, approximately 333 pound-feet. Compression ratio, 7.5 to 1. Boost compensates for low, static compression. Carburation, Carter AFB 4-barrel carburetor. Transmission, Borg-Warner Flight-O-Matic 3-speed automatic. This setup gave the Clipper very respectable acceleration for a 1957 full-size car. It could go toe-to-toe with many V8-powered Fords and Chevys, despite being heavier. Performance estimates, 0 to 60 miles per hour, approximately 10 seconds. Top speed, 110 to 115 miles per hour. Quarter mile, 17 seconds. It wasn't a drag strip terror, but it was quick, and the supercharger gave it a distinctive whine that hinted at its hidden strength. For Packard, it was a desperate but impressive move, using forced induction at a time when very few manufacturers dared. The biggest challenge the Clipper faced was styling credibility. The 1957 model was essentially a Studebaker President hardtop with a modified front and rear clip, plus Packard badging. While the result wasn't ugly, it lacked originality, and longtime Packard loyalists recognized the deception instantly. Key design features: wide mesh grille to differentiate it from Studebaker. Quad headlamps, an emerging 1957 trend. Tail fins integrated into the rear fenders. Subtle two-tone paint options, supercharged badging on the fenders. But for many buyers, it didn't look like a Packard, and the brand's image, one built on bespoke luxury and stately design, couldn't survive the perception of badge engineering. Inside, the Clipper Supercharged had some upscale touches, but nothing like the luxury Packards of old. Remember, this was now a car built on a shoestring budget. It did feature full instrumentation, optional push-button automatic transmission controls, air conditioning, rare, padded dash, and upgraded trim on top models. Still, the interior felt closer to a mid-tier Studebaker than a high-end Packard. Buyers in 1957 could get more flash and more tech from a Chrysler 300C or a Cadillac for not much more money. Today, the 1957 Packard Clipper Supercharged is an obscure but fascinating footnote in muscle car history. Number 1, the 1957 Hudson Hornet 4.8, a car that embodies a turbulent era of American automotive history and the fading glory of a once iconic brand. The Hudson Hornet of the early 1950s was a legend. Known for its step-down chassis design, low center of gravity, and dominance in NASCAR, it earned a fierce reputation for both style and performance. Hudson was a pioneer and a powerhouse, a true American muscle car before the term even existed. But by 1957, Hudson as an independent automaker was long gone. After merging with Nash Kelvinator in 1954 to form American Motors Corporation, AMC, the Hudson brand struggled to survive. The 1957 Hudson Hornet was no longer the bold, innovative machine it once was. Instead, it became a badge-engineered version of AMC's full-size car, powered by a respectable but generic 327 cubic inch V8 engine. To understand the 1957 Hornet, we must first look at Hudson's decline. Hudson was a pioneer in the late 1940s and early 1950s with its step-down design, which lowered the car's center of gravity and enhanced handling. The Hornet dominated NASCAR from 1951 to 1954, beating larger and more powerful cars on both speed and handling. However, Hudson's small size and conservative approach couldn't compete with the post-war styling arms race and booming V8 muscle of the Big Three. In 1954, Hudson merged with Nash Kelvinator to form AMC, hoping to pool resources. Hudson's separate production ended in 1957, marking the brand's final year. The 1957 Hudson Hornet was essentially an AMC full-size sedan with Hudson badging. Gone were the iconic low-slung step-down chassis and unique styling cues. Chassis and body, the car rode on a shared AMC platform that was taller and heavier than the original Hornet. The styling was a conservative, rounded 1950s design, bland compared to the flamboyant Detroit Giants. No longer a standout visually, it lacked the character Hudson loyalists expected. Engine and powertrain. The 1957 Hornet was offered with AMC's 327 cubic inch V8 engine. This was a robust small block engine, producing about 255 horsepower, respectable but not groundbreaking. The engine was paired with a 3-speed manual or automatic transmission. Performance. The car was reasonably quick for a full-size sedan of the era, but lacked the handling magic of earlier Hornets. It offered muscle in the sense of power, but it had lost the sharpness and nimbleness Hudson was once famous for. The 1957 Hudson Hornet suffered from one of the most severe problems in automotive history: loss of brand identity through badge engineering. The original Hornet was a technological innovator, well known for its handling and racing pedigree. By 1957, it was just another AMC car with a Hudson grille and logo slapped on. The loyal Hudson customer base was alienated. They saw the new Hornet as just a rebadged Nash or AMC lacking soul. Dealers had trouble marketing a car that wasn't really a Hudson anymore. The styling was uninspired, the engineering was generic, the aura was gone. This created an image problem worse than any mechanical issue. The Hornet nameplate, once a symbol of power and prestige, was now a hollow badge with no connection to its heritage. In 1957, the American full-size market was dominated by Detroit's Big Three: Chevrolet, Ford, and Chrysler, all offering increasingly powerful V8s, stylish designs, and strong dealer networks. The 327 V8 under the hood of the Hudson Hornet was decent but nowhere near the power output or sophistication of Chevrolet's small block or Chrysler's Hemi options. The Hornet's styling paled next to flashy rivals like the Chevrolet Bel Air or the Chrysler 300C. Price-wise, the Hornet was also at a disadvantage because AMC's economies of scale were limited. Advertising and brand recognition for Hudson were minimal by this point. Younger buyers, the emerging muscle car market, and even traditional buyers were moving elsewhere. The 1957 model was the last Hudson Hornet ever produced. Sales were weak, and AMC decided to kill the Hudson brand entirely after this model year.